Welcome to Your Files. Today we're going to talk about how files are created in our computer and what we can do to manage them, find them, rename them, delete them, restore them if we deleted them accidentally and want them back, and back them up for safety. We're going to start out by going through a theoretical discussion of how they're arranged on the computer. Nothing too technical, just trying to give you a feel for how all of this works so that you can apply that when you're actually trying to find things there. Then we're going to open up some folders together and go over how we would do this. Just so you know, we're going to be working in a Windows 10 environment for this video today, but if you have an older computer that's running Windows 8 or Windows 7 or even something older than that, it should still work more or less the same. Some little things in appearance will be slightly different, but all of the basics work the same. So here I am at the library's website, that's mybpl.org, and I'm going to go to the class program for today. So we're going to go to Services, Computers, Computer Classes, and down to Your Files. And this is a PDF that you can just open up to view, or you can download onto your computer if you want to play along. Or of course you can just watch with me here. So I'm not going to read this to you verbatim, but I want to show you some of the pictures here while we talk about some of the topics that we're going through. When we talk about files, some people don't know what that means. They might think that it means documents that are on their computer or ways that things are organized. A file is a very general term that we use in computers. It means anything that is stored in any way on the computer. So this can be a picture, it can be a movie, it can be a sound that the computer makes, a PDF that somebody emails you, a letter that you wrote and saved. It can be a little bit of gibberish that wouldn't mean anything to you if you opened it up, but it's important to how other things work. We have many, many files in our computers. When we take them out of the box, there's over 100,000 computers on a Windows 10. There's over 100,000 files on a Windows 10 computer. So there's a lot of them there. Most of them we don't really need to worry about. They do what they do on their own. We let them go. They run the operating system. They run the programs that run on our computers. By the way, programs or applications is a term that we use for kind of files that do things. So these would be things like Microsoft Word or Google Chrome or Firefox or tax software or a game that you play, anything that does a task for you on the computer instead of just sitting there and allowing you to view it. The files that we're going to concern ourselves with today are what we sometimes refer to as the data or content that you create. Things that you made on your own. So these are your documents. These are things that you download. These are pictures, videos, music that you buy. If you have an iTunes account, then maybe you buy the music through there. If you have Google, maybe you get it through the Google Play Store. These are things that you store on your computer and on your phone, and you want to be able to go back to and find later on. Now, I mentioned storing them on your phone because we have files on that as well, and you can transfer from one to the other. I want to be clear that we are talking today about file structures for computers because phones just handle this in a very different way. Phones are much more locked down, which makes them more secure and less prone to viruses. It does make them a little bit harder to manage, and different phones, iPhones and Android phones, handle these things differently and are really their own entire class on that topic. So we're going to stay away from that today. But I do want to mention that the same files can go from your devices to your computers. Now, when they're stored on your computer, they have to go somewhere. And so that's why I have these little graphic representations of the file structure. When I do these classes in person, I usually have a big whiteboard out and I will draw it out and show how things get added and removed. That's something that's a little bit harder to do online like this, but I do want to give you a feel for it. So we have in our computer a lot of what we call drives. We're going to look at the drives for this computer in just a few minutes that we will get a feel for that. Within those drives, we have files and folders. Files are just individual files that we have. You see some examples that I gave right here. Folders are entire storage locations for them. Now, I sometimes compare this to having a file cabinet. You could have every piece of paper in your file cabinet just tossed in there and you'd have all of the same information. But we put them in those hanging files so that we can find them easier. And that's the same reason that we use folders on a computer. So we have these folders on the computer, and you see some common examples will be Windows, program files. You'll have user folders. So if you have a username on your computer, which just about every computer does, you would have a username for yourself, and you might have multiple ones depending on the environment that you set up with the computer. Most home computers just have one. Work computers tend to have multiple usernames for different people. And then within that user, you would have what are called libraries. And we'll get to those in just a couple of minutes. But the libraries are where you store your documents or your pictures or your videos or your music. Libraries used to be called the My Documents folder or My Pictures folder. That's in Windows Vista and earlier. That's what they called them. They changed it over to Libraries with Windows 7. It's just a difference in name. It doesn't actually affect how it works. A library is a folder like any other folder. It's just one of the built-in ones that's stored there and is intended to be slightly easier for you to find. And we'll see how when we open that up in just a minute. Now, one of the reasons that I draw this picture out for you is we're going to talk later on about moving and deleting files, how you would copy and paste them, move them from one location to another, or delete them if you don't want them. And that's why I like to draw this tree diagram, because I want you to understand that if you cut off a branch of a tree, if you think of an actual tree, everything that's below that branch, no matter how long or big it is, falls off with it. And that's what happens with these files too. Because inside folders, you very often have more folders. You can see how I depict that down here. And you have inside those folders, you might have individual files or another folder. And so you might not know what this folder here at the top is, and you might see it and think, oh, I don't need that. And if you just delete it, you would lose all of the things underneath it. And that can be thousands of files that are stored in multiple folders that are in there. So you always want to be careful about what you choose to remove and get rid of. So in this example, we deleted branch 1, and branch 2 stays there, but everything underneath there goes away. So that's why we choose to be cautious about deleting things. I always tell people when I teach these classes, if you're thinking of deleting something, make sure you know what it is and what it's for. I'm going to show you how to use the recycle bin to bring back files that you've deleted, but that doesn't mean that you want to take a chance. Some things, when you delete them, will go to the recycle bin and you can restore them safely. Others, either because of file name errors, sometimes the file name is very long and becomes a problem when it tries to go to the recycle bin, or because of simply the size of the file, it might be too big for the recycle bin and would go straight to being deleted permanently. Also, if you delete things from drives that are not part of the computer, we're going to talk about that in just a minute, but you have drives that are internal to the computer, and you have drives that are external, like a USB plug that you would put in. If you delete external files or external folders, there is no bringing them back. There is no recycle bin for that. So you want to be very careful about that. Finally, if we move things instead of deleting them, you can see that it moves everything underneath it as well. So if we, instead of deleting that branch 1 folder, if we cut it, we're going to learn about cutting and pasting in just a few minutes. We're going to do that together. And moved it to another folder, you can see everything that's underneath it becomes underneath that new folder as well. We already discussed the drives and libraries a little bit. I'm going to give you some specifics here, and then I'm going to show you a demonstration of that on the screen. So different kinds of drives that we have. The most important one are what are referred to as hard drives, sometimes called local drives or hard disks. That's a physical drive that's inside of the computer. Every computer has had a hard drive in it for more than 30 years. That is how they store the files to make them work when they turn on. If you download and install a program, or if you buy a program on CD and install it, those programs are installed on the hard drive. That's where everything goes. The vast majority of your files are going to be on the hard drive. It's usually referred to as the C drive. Some computers have multiple ones of them. There'll be the C and the D drive. A very popular design now with newer computers is that you will have a very fast hard drive as the C drive that allows the computer to reboot quickly. But then you will have a larger hard drive for storage that will be the D drive. That's where you would keep all of your files so that you don't run out of space on the fast one. So you'll see that on a lot of computers made in the last couple of years. That way you save a little bit of money and still get to have the best of both worlds. You get to have a fast startup and a larger storage space. Those create, as I said, multiple drives. Older computers, we used to put multiple hard drives in because the hard drives didn't store as much. And so if you have an older machine, you might have a C and D drive for that as well, just for extra storage. That was less and less common until, as I said, a couple years ago when they've started having these multiple drives that have different speeds and different performance designs. I can get into the hardware of that if people are curious about it, but I don't want to bore you with that at this point. Just know that most things that you have are stored on the hard drive, and you want to check on that for storage space that you have available. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a couple of moments when we open up the folder and look at the drives. Next, I want to show you the external drive. So these are things that are plugged in or connected but can be removed. Optical drives, which means CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, and disk drives, usually USB plugs. Disk drives are something that are very, very outdated, but I do still see people coming in with them every now and then. You can get external disk readers that will read old floppy drives, and you would plug those into a USB plug. USB drives are the most common one that you're going to see here. Those are the thumb-sized drives that you would have that you would plug directly in, and those are something that when you plug them in, the drive is recognized and it appears, and then you can see the files on it and you can copy things to and from it, and then when you remove it, it disappears, and you can then plug it into any other computer or device. Network drives are storage on shared locations. This is something you typically use in a work or educational environment where you have a shared space that you save all your work to. In a workplace, normally you would do this so that you would have a safe thing to download and to back up to, so that everybody would have all of their work backed up on a nightly basis without backing up every single individual computer. At home, that is not something that most people have. Some people set up a network drive at home so that they can have multiple drives in their house, get to the same music or videos that they have, but most people don't have that set up in their home. And finally, cloud drives. You can have sometimes a local representation of a space reserved for you on the World Wide Web. This is if you have, say, for example, Google Drive set up where you are storing things on the cloud. You can install something on your computer that you can save things directly to your Google Drive account. This is not something that I'm going to get into in today's class. I do have an entire class on cloud backup. It's a topic that I have a lot of interest in and I love to talk about. So if you're curious about this as a safety or backup measure, feel free to give me a call here at the library or come by our lab. I'll be happy to talk to you about it, or you can check out our class on cloud backup. Finally, I have the libraries here. This is where Windows provides default locations for documents, images, videos, and downloads. In earlier versions of Windows, these are called My Documents, My Pictures, etc. Windows 7 and newer refer to the locations as libraries and describe them by their contents. Those are documents, pictures. These are default locations for things to go. So if you have a word processor on your computer and you go to save it, a document that you've created, it will save it directly to the libraries document. If you have a digital scanner or you plug in a camera and you download the pictures from those to your computer, they will go to the pictures library. Same thing with video recordings. They will go to the videos library if you have any software that edits or creates those. So these are just default locations that things go to unless you tell them otherwise. There are also places where you can copy or save things to if you are so inclined. If you have different storage setups, you might have a reason to save things to places other than your libraries, but it is the most convenient place to put things. Now, the last thing that I want to discuss before we get into actually working with these skills is I want to talk about storage and backup. If you have files on your computer that you care about, if you use your computer for more than just browsing the web or playing games on it, and you actually want to store things like pictures, movies, music, if you have important documents, maybe you do your taxes every year and either your accountant sends them to you or TurboTax downloads you the file afterwards and you want to make sure you don't lose those, there are a lot of different options for storage and backup. I have a few of them listed here. External hard drive. This is where you would purchase a product, usually it costs somewhere in the range of $50 to $100 depending on the options that you go with, that you would plug into your computer and you would set it up to automatically back up what's on your computer to that device on a nightly or weekly basis. These are good. This is a good solution. It works well for a lot of people. It's a one-time cost, which a lot of people like, as opposed to a subscription fee. The downside of it is that the initial setup can sometimes be a little tricky for new users. It's not that bad. I don't want to scare you away from doing it, but it's not as easy as just plugging it in. You do have to go through some setup procedures depending on the external hard drive that you purchase. And the second and probably the bigger concern is that it is in the same physical location as your computer. And so if you have an issue like a fire or a flood, then sometimes that can, or perhaps a large electrical surge, sometimes that can affect both the computer and the external hard drive. So something to be aware of, but for a lot of people this is a good, practical, low-cost solution to provide safe backup. Next one that I mentioned here, I have optical drive. USB drives can go along with this. A lot of people have the solution of they will copy the files they need onto a CD or DVD or onto a USB drive and put it in a drawer and hold onto it. This is the lowest cost, lowest tech solution. It's not something that I recommend because there are a lot of problems with it, but it's better than nothing. So if you have just a handful of important files you want to make sure you don't lose and you want to copy them to a USB drive, okay. That's a whole lot better than doing nothing. That way, if your computer breaks, you do have a safety net for it. The main concern with this is that it's dependent on the user remembering to make the copies of that. And I say the user instead of you because I don't want to make anybody feel bad that I'm insulting them or criticizing their ability to do it. This is anybody. Any system that is dependent on the person using it remembering to do something on a regular basis is a risky system and one that I worry about. So I prefer things that are automated, that the computer does without asking you over and over again, so that if you create new files, if you store new pictures, it uploads them or saves them in a way that is automatic and doesn't require you to remember it. But if you just have a few things and you don't want to spend any money on anything else, definitely copy them somewhere just so if your computer breaks, you don't lose them. And then finally, we have cloud storage. Again, I have a whole class on that. I don't want to dig into it too much today, but this entails options that you would install something on your computer and it would, again, on a nightly or hourly basis, copy everything from that computer to a location somewhere else that would be safe storage. This is my personal favorite. We use it at the library and I use it at home as a backup solution for files that are on the computer, because I do take a lot of pictures and have a lot of information that's stored that I don't want to lose. So I like this for the peace of mind that I know that if something happens to my equipment in my house, that everything that I have is still stored somewhere else. And so, as I said, this is my favorite solution, but there is a monthly cost associated with it. It's usually in the $5 to $10 a month range, and so that is a choice that everybody would have to make for themselves, whether or not they want to do that. With that, I would now like to open up the folder of this computer locally, and I'm going to show you how some of these libraries work, how everything is organized on a modern computer, and go over how we would delete, copy, and paste, and move some files around.
Okay, let's take a look at the Windows Explorer and how we would find our files and work with them. So this window was brought up by opening the yellow folder icon that you have down there at the bottom. You can also get to it by right-clicking on the Windows icon and choosing File Explorer. That will bring up the same thing that we're seeing here. On the left, we see the quick navigation. This is why you don't need to know that tree system that I described earlier for getting from place to place. I've been teaching this class for a long time, and in earlier versions of Windows, I would show you how to move from folder to folder, follow along the branches that we described to find the files that you wanted. Now it's a lot more efficient. Now I can simply go to whichever of the libraries that we see listed here under this PC that I want to go to. You can also see on the left-hand side we have what they refer to as quick access, places that they think you might want to be able to get to fast. So I'm going to run through everything that we see here on the screen, and then we'll go over how you would use all this. So in front of us we see devices and drives. So this is showing I have Bluetooth connection set up on my computer, so that's listed there as an extra one. We see the C drive, that is the local hard drive that works the operating system on my computer, and then the data drive, which is the larger one where you would store all of your files. If I were to plug in a USB drive, I'll do that a little bit later on, you would see that pop up as well. Above here we see some key folders that they listed. Pictures, videos, documents, downloads, music, desktop, which is where you see things when they're stored just locally on your computer right on the initial screen that you have. And then 3D objects, that's because of a program that I have installed on the computer. You may or may not have that on your machine as well. So on the left-hand side, we see a directory that matches a lot of those key folders. And if I want to go to any of them, I would simply click on, say, music. I don't have anything stored here. I have a navigation thing to my larger folder. You can go to pictures, videos, documents, and you can just bounce around to whatever you want to get to. If you were to go into the C drive, you could do that either by double-clicking on the icon right on the screen or by single-clicking the item in the directory here. You would see all of the folders underneath there, and then you could go into an individual folder by, again, either double-clicking it there and then see these subfolders underneath. And so you can see how we go through a lot of different files and a lot of different folders here. At the top, we have what's referred to as the breadcrumb trail. This is showing you the path that you have followed to get there. So we started out with this PC. That's the top of the tree. That's everything that's on this computer. Then we went into the hard drive. That's the C drive there. And then inside of that, we went into the program files folder. And then if, say, I went into Fire Access Games, we would see another folder there. Go into Pirates, and so on until I get to the actual file that I want. Now, most of the time, you're not going to be navigating through the folders in the hard drive. You're only going to be concerned with these libraries, as we discussed before. So if I go to, say, Documents, then I would see folders that I have in my documents, things that are stored here that I've created on this computer or downloaded to it and want to be able to get to. So that's how we navigate around through this. Finally, in the quick access, in addition to some of the basic ones that we have here, they will have folders that you have used recently. So for example, I was putting together some pictures for my son's 9th birthday, and so I have a folder for that, and I can jump right to that. And I click there, and it shows me those pictures right away. So that's the virtue of the quick access. Some of these will always be there, the desktop downloads, documents, and pictures, but some of these suggestions will change depending on what you have used recently or what you most frequently use. And so those will appear in that way. I'm going to go back to documents here, and we're going to talk about how we would delete and rename and make some changes to things. So first off, if you want to see everything that you can do with a file, you would get to that by right-clicking on the file, and you will see a menu pops open. These gray rectangles that appear when you right-click on something are referred to as menus. You don't need to memorize everything that's in them, just remember how to get to them, because the menu will be different depending on what you right-click on. If you right-click on a folder, it has different options than on a file, and so on. But some of the key options are always there. I want to focus on those. At the bottom, we see Properties. That gives you information about the file that you are selecting. Above that, we see Rename. That allows you to change the name of it. Delete. That allows you to, of course, remove it from the computer. Copy and Cut. Create Shortcut is something you would do if you wanted to have this accessible from, say, the desktop of your computer because you wanted to use it a lot. We're not going to worry about that one today. But Copy, Cut, and Delete, I think we'll do Rename too, are all things that we're going to work with. So I want to keep an eye on those. Okay, so let's run through some of the basic operations that we do on a file. So I'm taking here this resume example. Say I wanted to get rid of it. I just wanted to delete this file. I can right-click on it and choose Delete. When I do that, it simply disappears. In some older versions of Windows, it would ask you a "Are you sure?" question, and it would say, "Are you sure you want to send this to the recycle bin?" Or if this was a file on a USB plug, or USB drive, I should say, it would ask you, "Are you sure you want to delete this permanently?" Now, once you've done that, you can bring it back by going to the recycle bin if this is something that was stored locally on a hard drive. I'm going to minimize this window here. We're going to come back to this and go to the recycle bin, which you should be able to find on your desktop. I can open that by double-clicking it. And you can see I have a number of files in here, not too many, but I have a few. And if I wanted to bring them back, I have some options across the top. You see Restore All Items. I don't want to do that. I deleted several of these on purpose, so I want them to stay deleted. And Empty Recycle Bin, which would get rid of everything permanently. I don't want to do that either because I want to bring back the resume example. So to bring back this individual one, I select it by left-clicking on it, and then I click Restore the Selected Items. Whoops, I accidentally double-clicked on it. Sorry about that. And that opened it right up when I double-clicked on it. But when I just click Restore the Selected Item, it looks like I deleted it here from the recycle bin, but it actually has been brought back to Documents, and so you see it there. Now, what happened a moment ago is when I double-clicked on it, it opened it up to edit and work with the file. That is how you would open files if you wanted to do something with them. You would either double-click on them, or you can right-click on them and choose Open. If you have a file type, like say a picture or a video, that you could open with multiple programs, you can choose the Open With option, and that would give you different options available for that program. You see, with this, I can either use Microsoft Word or LibreOffice, which is a free version of Microsoft Word that I have installed on the computer. Now, other options that we have here, Rename, I can choose that, and that allows you to edit the name that's available there. You see they have highlighted the name of it. I can choose New Resume if I wanted to. And you type in the name that you want and you press Enter. I recommend against changing the 3-letter extensions at the end of files. Those 3-letter extensions tell the computer what kind of file it is. So that allows you to, for it to know what kind of programs should be used to open it. So you want to be careful about that. Sometimes if you're a little bit more advanced, you might want to do that to change how images or other things are handled, but it's pretty rare. So be careful about that. In the file names, you can have spaces, you can have numbers, but avoid punctuation. So you can have letters, numbers, spaces, things like the dash or the underscore are fine. You see the underscore in the file name here. But as I said, try to avoid things like question marks, exclamation points, slashes, because those will cause it to fail. Finally, if you want to move a file from place to place, we have the options of copying, cutting, and pasting. Now, some of you might be familiar with the fact that you can simply drag and drop a file from one location to another. One catch about that, when you move a file from one folder to another within the same drive, it will do the equivalent of cutting and pasting, so it will remove it. So if I were to grab this and drag it to, say, this Zoom folder here, you say, whoop, it goes away, because it has now taken it from here and put it to there. But this All Documents shortcut that I have here actually links to a different drive on my computer. So if I were to drag it to this, or say if you were to drag something to a USB drive, it stays in both locations. So watch as I drag this chat log here, and I drop it to there. It did in fact copy it to All Documents, but it left it here as well. So that's the equivalent of a copy and paste, whereas the dragging to a local folder is the equivalent of a cut and paste. Cut and paste removes it from its original location and then puts it in the new location that you put it in. So I am going to try this again. I am going to right click on this and I'm going to choose cut, and this time I'm going to plug in a USB drive. So here's a USB drive. I have a few things stored on there. And now when I right click on this and I choose paste, I now see that file has been moved from one location to another, and you see it's no longer there. Whereas if I were to right click on this and choose copy, and then I go over to the USB drive and I right click and paste, it stays in the original location and it's in the new one. So if you're giving something to someone and you want them to have both, or you want them to have it and you want to keep it as well, you would copy and paste. If you want to make sure it's in just one place, you would cut and paste. I hope this was helpful. If you have any further questions about the files, please feel free to stop by the library at any time. Have a great day.